call this meeting to order. This is a study session of the Lathrup Village Planning Commission for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. And this is Chair Piotrowski, and I am calling into that meeting from my location in Lathrup Village, Michigan, Oakland County, Michigan. Okay. So let's just go down the rest of the list for the rest of the folks to step in and identify themselves and their location.
I'll go. Bruce Cantor, Lathrup Village, Michigan, Oakland County.
Jason Hammond is here from my home in Lathrup Village, Oakland County, Michigan.
Charo Huyeza, Lathrup Village, Oakland County, Michigan.
It looks like San Francisco.
You didn't see the new bridge on Southfield?
There is significant water loss in the city. It's possible.
It's been raining a lot.
Les Stansberry, Lathrup Village, Michigan, Oakland County.
Anna Thompson, calling from Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Wilbert Fobbs, Lathrup Village, Oakland County, Michigan.
Hey, I think that's everyone with the commission. And what we'll do now is we'll proceed with the next item on the agenda, which is discussion of the sign ordinance and the R1 amendment, parking as a special land use.
Right, well, I can get started with the discussion of the sign ordinance. Ooh, I hear an echo. What I see that I sent out in the packet last month and that got included again was the clean version. So it's a little bit hard to tell exactly what the changes were. But essentially the beginning of the year, we took a look at just cleaning up the sign ordinance from a standpoint of compatibility with Reed versus Gilbert, a case that resulted in modifying the way that communities regulate signage, in particular temporary signage, to really make it more content neutral. The majority of the ordinance already is pretty content neutral, but we did make some changes to that, including removing some definitions of things like political signs and some of the signs that we define by name. The other area of note is the area about illumination. And so you'll see on page 7, at the bottom, letter K, the section on illumination, letters C, D, and E have been added. And really we added that to regulate both glare control and the source of illumination. So we want to make sure that signs aren't brightly shining into people's eyes, particularly as they drive. And also looking at the glow from around the letters, because we know that's been an issue. So saying that you have a letter, if the glow around it spreads more than 4 inches, then you've got to count all of that as part of the sign area, in the hopes that that might contain some of the illumination around those signs. And so those were, I think, the bulk of the changes that we made, really. And then just, again, cleaning it up from a content perspective in terms of regulating temporary signs. You'll see that on page 15, there's a chart that shows just a regulation of temporary signs from freestanding or wall sign perspectives. So in this area, we're not calling out specific kinds of signs. The idea, sort of rule of thumb of considering content, it would be if you have to read it to know what kind of sign it is, then you're regulating it by content. So more the straightforward approach is to just allot a certain amount of temporary sign area and let people use it however they're going to use it. and not be concerned about what it says. And that way, all of those signs are treated the same way. As you know, this is not part of the zoning ordinance. This is a separate municipal code, and it is presented to you to get your feedback for council before they make any changes.
Okay, I guess we'll entertain any questions that anyone on the commission may have for Jill at this time regarding any specifics, or if there are none.
I've got a ton. Got a ton of questions, comments, and clarifications.
Sure.
I guess I'll start on page 8, which is the backlit verbiage, which is one of the things that kind of kicked off this whole process, is when we brought this up in council about the propagation of all these backlit signs that we're starting to see and kind of controlling them. Honestly, I guess I don't like the way that section E is written. Talking about limiting it to 4 inches, and then if it goes beyond 4 inches, counting that as the part of the overall area allowed by the sign. So the example that I kind of worked up is, let's say you've got a principal wall sign that's or let's say a normal one that's say 3 feet high by 8 feet wide. So that's 24 square feet, and the maximum is 64 square feet. Now you add backlit illumination to that, and let's say they illuminate it 1 1/4 feet around the entire sign. So that sign is now 5.5 by 10.5, and it's 58 square feet, which is still within the limit. But now they've got 15 inches of glow around that sign, and it's legal via the ordinance. So I mean, personally, I'd like to see it kept at the 4 inches maximum. I mean, I'd like to see it at 0. But if we are going to allow it, I'd rather us pick a limit and keep within that limit, rather than allowing it to encroach on the overall area of the sign, because you can end up getting a lot of backlit within that stipulation of the ordinance. That's first comment on that. So I don't know how others feel.
Yeah, I agree with that, but also not all backlight is created equal. For example, the Jagged Forks sign, right? Their logo sign is backlit. It's backlit in red. You can't even hardly see it except at night when they're closed. But to me, like, that's really a different type of thing than a sign like you were describing, Bruce. It's white and has an additional 1 to 1.5 feet of broad white backlight behind it. So I guess my question is, why isn't it? I know it's hard to get things that are like, so if you make it too specific, like certain types of lights are allowed and others aren't, then it becomes almost impossible to enforce. But that, in theory, maybe you could use something like the number of lumens, like the brightness of the light and things like that as well. It just seems like to specify a specific color of light and I agree with Bruce on the area, right? But I guess a question is, why do we pick white light explicitly for this language?
Well, I know one of the signs when it first happened was over. I think it's over by Vintage Village. That's backlit in bright red and pink, I think. And I think just when we were talking about in council, it just kind of looked gaudy, and so that's probably how the white light got in there. I actually didn't even notice that it said white light until you said something, Jason. But yeah, so. You're on, Mark. I think you're talking, but you're on mute.
Yep. Yeah, I just caught it off here. There's a little bit of background noise. I was going to comment regarding white light. White light I could see being associated with glare more so than, say, red or other colors, given the flexibility with LEDs and the tendency for more color to be used, or the potential for certainly color or color changing to occur. you know, it just seems like it's something that's much more prevalent today.
But doesn't our zoning ordinance prohibit changing color lights? Doesn't it have to be a fixed color?
Yeah, we're not supposed to have lights that scroll or change colors.
Okay.
Sorry, now I'm muted. In theory, you could have changing color lights that don't actively change, right? You could have like a solid, an LED that would make a solid white light. You could push a button and change it to a blue light, right? And it wouldn't be automatic, and maybe they just change it on a daily basis or something like that. I mean, LEDs work that way too. So, I mean, so I guess that kind of calls into question, like, do you need to, we could specify that just needs to be a single color.
Well, can I share with you this picture? Susie, can you give me the ability to share my screen?
Oh yeah, that's my picture, I think. I was
Well,
just searching for that.
I took that
Oh,
picture,
okay.
but yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I was searching for that same picture as we were talking because I was going to put it up as well.
yeah, so that's where the white came from, thinking that white goes with everything. But if you're, this is what I thought you all were not wanting. So that's where that came from.
I was going to say, I could definitely see where the color I mean, the use of color in this instance as the backlight certainly contributes to the size of the signage.
Right. So 4 seemed like enough that you could have a little bit of glow, but anything more than that should count towards the sign, unless you don't want to allow it and then put it 4.
Yeah, I'd rather just see it stay at 4, like, or whatever we want to set it at, just maximum.
Have there been any signage companies consulted as far as the ability to control? I mean, just some technical background or expertise related to that?
Whether they can control this?
Whether
Yes.
they can control the spread of light in a backlit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my personal preference is if we allow it would be to allow just a few inches, you know, and be in white. I mean, that would be my personal preference.
Oh, I was muted. I agree with that. With the 4 inches and just white light.
Do we actually have to allow it though? Can we not allow it?
Yeah.
Not allow backlight?
Not allow it completely?
Of course
Well,
we can.
like you said, there is the jagged fork that does have some that doesn't look bad. I mean, problem is we have not figured out how to regulate good taste yet. Once we do, that's what we're going to write in all our codes.
I got you.
Signage is advertising. When has it ever been about good taste? It's
right,
about
and
catching eyes.
Advertising, attention getting.
Okay. Then if we're gonna allow it, then yeah, I agree. It should be white.
Like this one, let me share it again. The Exxon sign. If I can zoom, can I zoom in? Oops. I can't, my little toolbar's in the way, but anyway, you can see it does have a little bit of white behind the letters and it looks fine, I think. I don't think that's offensive. But it's about how much there is. And again, it's otherwise, it's a pretty clean logo. It's a pretty clean sign.
Was there any significance behind the 4 inches?
It just, based on what you kind of had, and it was sort of just an interpretation. No, there's really nothing.
So if we said that the 4 inches had to be included in the size of the sign, it would still be fine?
Sure.
Not the sign plus 4, but the sign including 4.
No, you lost me. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So,
You're saying that the 4 inches counts as part of the area of the sign?
exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could do that.
But then that way you could still get your backlight, but it counts as part of the sign. You might make your sign a little bit smaller by 4 inches to get your backlight.
Okay.
kind of curious to regulate. We don't regulate color in other regards, or where are we at with color?
Don't we regulate?
We are not regulating color. There was a day where signs were regulated by color. And that was another time and another place.
Yeah, I remember a discussion years ago where
Years
with
ago.
references to other community that were tried to control or have their sign have some more uniformity to it, and that seemed like an impossible thing to
Right.
control.
Well,
No.
we used to, I think.
Right. It was like blue, green, and
Yeah,
red, like a
I
burnt.
mean, I remember when the bank came and the bank had to get a variance to be able to use their branded color.
Right.
I guess the reason I asked that in terms of when we reference color of light, so we are regulating color in a regard, but only for this specific signage type or signage method.
Well, I think because it's relating to light, it's okay. There could be other kinds of colors that you regulate. In terms of background, sometimes if it's like a dark background and the sign becomes less noticeable, you could regulate that so that if it was a color other than like black, that then the background counts as part of the sign area. So communities do that as well.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to think if there's anything hidden here that's not
And it doesn't have
addressed.
to be. It doesn't. I mean, if you are okay with it being a red glow or a green glow or whatever, that's fine.
I guess I have less trouble with the color, but I could see where that does open up the door potentially for maybe something that's a little bit more, let's see, I grew up down the street from one of the original, one of the largest Murray's auto parts stores. In fact, they did auto parts and hardware and jewelry where I grew up. And they painted their across their building these big rainbow-like banners as part of their logo back in the day, and it just ended up referring to it as a, I guess friends of mine referred to it as Murray's Hardware Carnival because of the brightness of the color. Anyway, just a
Yeah,
anecdote.
I feel like in this case, like if the ordinance says white, then people will default to that. People can always apply for a variance.
Well, but that's not something that. What would your hardship be? Right. I have to have yellow. It's.
Yeah, there isn't one.
There really isn't. I mean, signs are hard for that reason.
It would only be if you're a corporate entity that's national and your branded logo is a certain color or your sign is a certain way. We had that issue before someplace else with Blockbuster, when Blockbuster was popular, because they had to have their awning and everything. So it was a big to-do, but that would probably be the only issue that somebody would have if it's something national where their logo doesn't fit a white backlight.
Yeah, or if they get so specific as to define that they use backlit signage as part of their logo because they like it and they have color as part of that.
Yeah. Outside of that, it probably would never come up.
Right. And communities are able to, if that's their sign regulation and they have it spelled out in those sign standards, they don't have to allow it. And there are communities that regulate by color that you can only have, for example, black and gold. And the companies have to just manage with that.
Well, I'm okay with that. That sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing I had on that section, which is a nitpicky thing, but in item B, where we say, you know, it has to meet the requirements of section 5.8. Can we list section 5.8 of the zoning ordinance there? So if somebody's reading this, they don't have to go to two different documents?
No, I would prefer not to actually.
Okay.
Just because if section 5.8 changes in any way, then you're going to have an inconsistent code. You'll have to remember that we referenced it in the sign ordinance, and then we have to cross-reference and make sure and that doesn't always happen, so.
Makes sense.
Is
Yeah,
it possible to link to that document in the electronic version?
sure, could probably do that.
That would be a good
Yeah,
idea.
the only reason why I say that, and Scott can attest to this, I'm constantly bothering Scott because, you know, I get a question from a resident, and I never know whether or not what I'm telling them is accurate or not, because sometimes it's in the you know, the body of ordinances, sometimes it's in the zoning ordinances, and it'd be great if things were together to the extent that they could be.
Codes are that way a lot too. So it's the ability to electronic link is going to be a boon once they get organized and get that documentation fully connected that way.
And then on page 14, under other signs, it says outline tubing sign. It says outline tubing signs are limited to 2 square feet and 1 per business. Didn't we outlaw those?
Mm,
Because I know we've made people take them down.
I don't think we outlawed the signs. It's just 2 square feet. It's like an open sign.
Okay, not the rope light. I'm thinking of
Not
the rope light.
lighting around the windows, no.
You're thinking of and I was thinking like what, neon?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So it's the open signs, the closed signs, and things of that nature. The small.
So the other one would be called what? Rope lighting, or
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if there's a technical term beyond that.
Right. Instead of calling it neon, because they could be filled with other things.
All right, and then on the temporary signs on page 15, I've got a lot of questions on that new section. I guess the biggest question that just doesn't sit, or issue, I guess it doesn't sit well with me, and maybe there's an explanation. It has to do on the residential section where we talk about 0.2 square feet of sign per linear foot of frontage, with a maximum of 48. To me, that implies that you're. So I'm thinking like in terms of maybe, you know, what we now call expressive signs, for example. Basically, your ability to express yourself is limited by the size of your lot, and I just have a feeling that we're going to take if we were to implement it this way, we're going to take a lot of flack from residents, as opposed to like we have now. You know, it's 24 square feet with a maximum of 6 square feet per sign, so everybody can have 4 signs. So I think you're going to get a lot of flack if you know one house is allowed 4 signs, but their next door neighbor is only allowed 2. It just seems to sit better with me if we just kind of do something like we had before, where there's a maximum square footage, both in terms of overall max as well as max of, you know, any one given sign. And then, you know, with that same portion of the ordinance, I guess the other 2 issues I have is right now it says 48 square feet as the maximum. That just seems to me to be way too high. And then it also says 12 square feet per any individual sign. Again, that seems pretty big too. I mean, right now we're at 6 square feet, so people have the 2x3s. And so now you're going up to 3x4s. Just seems a little big for somebody's residential lawn. But other people may have different opinions. But that was my thinking, at least on the freestanding residential spot.
I would tend to agree with that. I think the sizes sound large, and then getting back to the street frontage. Given the configuration of our lots, it's not even necessarily size of your lot, because it could be a configuration. If you happen to be on the, you know, a pie-shaped lot and you've got little street frontage, it's kind of arbitrary.
I mean, I kind of like the way we have it now in terms of 24 square feet, maximum of 6, but 6 per sign.
That seemed reasonable to me too. I mean, I would think that our goal would be to encourage people to have 2x3 signs, right? Those are kind of the standard. Pretty much any sign you see strolling around the city today is about that size, right? So I think that what you suggested, Bruce, is reasonable. I think also 5 feet, a 5 foot tall sign is pretty tall.
These are intended to include real estate signs, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
So do we have a survey of real estate signs? I mean, typical signage, so we don't know that we're cutting them out.
Well, just imagine like the standard like post hole dug.
Yeah, right.
Sign, right?
Yeah, that's about as big as we usually see.
I'll go find one and stand by it if you want.
That'd be great.
It'll take me a minute I'll do it next time I'm in town.
Jill, can you call out real estate signs separately?
They are still
They can't get
content-based if you do that. So what we can do is we can regulate them by time, place, and manner. So we can regulate them by when they're normally out. And so you'll see that in letter Roman number 4 on the next page there. And it talks about the duration, like if there's a building that is available for sale or lease, then the maximum duration of that sign can be extended. But the sign area limits in the table still apply. So the signs, the size of them and the number of them is provided in that table on the previous page, but there's an extra provision for extra time based on if it's available for sale or lease. So you could have a house that's up for sale. Maybe you're also having a garage sale and you also want to tell everyone that they need to recycle and save the whales. And all those signs would be permitted.
So you can have a residential sign that can sit on a post like a real estate sign as long as it adheres to the time frame. It can be just as big as that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Say we haven't seen that yet, but I'm not sure I care to imagine that proliferating or becoming a trend.
That's a little nitpicky, but the reference to table 8A, that's an item.
Oh, yeah, it's a little different.
Isn't it table 5226I or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just a question too. I guess this is probably for well, Jill or Scott. So does this include political signs? Because I know in the current ordinance we have political signs broken out separately. So are there separate like laws about political signs? I mean, we used to have, or at least we currently have. You know, you can only have the signs out a certain number of days prior to the election and things like that. So does this substitute for political signs?
This is including political signs.
They would be included, and then candidates themselves have restrictions from the election commission on how long, when they can place their signs and when they have to remove them. So that generally gets encompassed by that regulation, not necessarily our own.
But Scott, that doesn't impinge on like a private homeowner with a sign that's a campaign sign.
No, and if a private homeowner wanted to keep their particular candidate sign up after election, or they would be allowed to do so under this new variant ordinance.
Okay, and then so with respect to the wall signs, I wasn't clear because it said see section 10 for permit requirements, but couldn't really find the section 10. So are wall signs, is there a permit required for wall signs?
No, not for residential.
Okay, so but is it for, well, because, okay. And how about for commercial?
I don't think we had that. I don't think those are
I think
required.
we do have a permit requirement for temporary signs. Is Kelda on? She might.
I thought we did too, because we just recently made some
Right.
people take them down or get a permit to allow to keep them up.
Right,
For
Well, I
yeah,
guess
for
there-
non-residential, I believe we do.
right.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking is because down at the bottom it talks about the display period for temporary wall signs shall be limited to a total of 28 days per calendar year. Such signs shall not be displayed any
Mhm.
continuous period greater than 14 days. And then somewhere else, I think there also had a, I don't know where I had it. Oh yeah, so on the next page, item 2, maximum display time of a freestanding temporary sign is 65 days. Once removed, there is to be a gap of at least 30 days. So I think if there's no permits required for any of these signs, then we run the same issue that we have now with I think we have 30 days or whatever it is. How do you enforce it? Because you don't know when somebody has a sign up, so it becomes non-enforceable. And so, unless there's some way of making people register their signs, then I guess that's more of a guideline. We can't really truly enforce it.
And the idea behind that is, well, especially for residential signs, especially for signs that are expressive signs or signs that you're, free speech, you don't want to have the prior restraint on that. So the opportunity for someone to come in to make a permit application, now they've got to wait for the city to tell them it's okay to put out their sign. And so that's not really cool from the residential side. And so for the freestanding signs, the idea is someone should just be able to go out and put a sign out in their yard whenever they want to. And also that they continue to be maintained in good condition and that they're not ratty. And so really the enforcement is probably more on the side of its appearance and its location. And just like other things where there's a timeline associated with it, it would be from the time someone observes it. So it may be that it was out there for 60 days and then someone notices it and now you've got like another additional time. And I don't know if Scott, if you want to add anything onto that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the time restrictions and the limitation and the permit requirements are primarily are directed at the non-residential. We've had issues in the past with perpetual suit sales and giant inflatable gorillas, things like that. So by requiring them to get that permit, and you're right, Bruce, it is an ability for the city to track how long they've had them up, and it does prevent that. Well, I'll just come in and get another permit. I'll just come in and get another permit, and then those signs have a tendency to proliferate. One vendor has one, and then the competing vendor feels that they need 2 of them, and so that's why those requirements are in there.
Yeah, could we? And I'm just thinking out loud here. Could we do something, without interfering with what would you refer to it as prior restraint, where residents were required to no permit application, but they were required to notify the city when they put signs up, and if they don't, and so somebody comes to my house and there's a sign up there and I didn't register, then you assume it's 65 days. They have to take it down for 30, something like that. Again, I'm just thinking out loud. That may be too.
I mean, the idea of doing that on a residential, as Jill said, that to me, I mean, we have the ability to regulate based on aesthetics and whether or not the sign is in good repair, if it's damaged, if it's faded, falling apart. But it's still, that's a balance that the city takes. I mean, that it's a very sensitive area when it comes to regulation. But with respect to the business, and Jill's right, time, place, manner regulations are permissible, and I think that's an appropriate way to handle that as far as the non-residential goes.
And we'll make that more clear that there's a permit required for that.
Yeah, okay.
clean that up a
All
little.
right.
What is section 10 for permit?
That's what I said. We just need to clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And then just the last thing I had was on item 5 on page 16, the first item 5, more of the top of the page. It says all temporary freestanding signs larger than 3 square feet shall have a frame or rigid border. That would eliminate almost all the signs that people put out, right? Because they don't have a frame or border around them. All the signs that people currently put out, like we've got 3 on our lawn right now, none of them have a frame.
Yeah, but you're 2 by 3, right?
Right,
Like I
but
said,
there's
that's 6 square feet, right? Yeah. So maybe that needs to be above 6 square feet or instead of 3 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a couple of things.
What defines a rigid frame?
It would be like a wooden frame or like a plastic or metal frame.
Right.
Something that's
okay.
rigid.
Something that's
As opposed to like all the lawn signs, the political signs you see out on people's lawns, which have no frame at all, right?
Or just a poster board.
Right, or just a poster.
A lot of those big ones that you see, you can't even read what they say because they've been blown over
Yeah.
and folded on themselves. So yeah, that's why.
Okay. All right. It's a means of just trying to establish appearance. Okay.
I had a couple of questions, pretty quick ones. On page 9, at the bottom of section 5223B for office districts, the monument sign number panel says 1 per parcel. 1 additional sign is permitted if the parcel has more than 100 feet of frontage on a mile road. So by mile road, are we saying that the monument signs are only allowed on 11 Mile Road and 12 Mile Road?
Yes, because that's where the office districts are.
Can we make that more explicit? And actually say 11 Mile Road and 12 Mile Road if we're trying to just...
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only place that they're located, but sure.
Just like, for me, clarity would help there. I mean, obviously 13 Mile Road and 10 Mile Road are outside of our city,
right.
But I still think
it. For now.
Yeah, until we take over.
Start annexing? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, when we start annexing. Well, we've already started with my cousin's house in Evergreen and 11 Mile. So that was one question. And then the other one, painted wall signs, which are prohibited. I'm imagining that includes murals.
No.
Not include murals. Murals is a separate thing.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a painted wall sign and a mural?
It's art.
It's art.
Yeah, we are just trying to not get into the business of regulating that right now. But,
I'm not saying that we should or should not prohibit murals. I just wanted to be. When I read painted wall signs, I was thinking that could include murals.
I have to agree with Jason too. That was one of my comments on here, and I free the art, right? So.
Right.
What page is that, Jason?
It is on page 17, part 7, 5228, prohibited signs.
Thanks.
It's item K.
Somebody paints a
K is
mural
painted
and
wall
puts
signs.
letters across it, then it's technically a sign. Yep.
I just wanted to bring it up. I'm not sure how we rationalize it, how we adjust for it, how we make it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Well, like Joe was saying, like there's a difference between a painted wall sign, which ostensibly would be for advertisement, or a mural, which would ostensibly be artistic.
We're trying to blend the two, which could occur.
And I don't recall if murals are addressed anywhere else in either, the zoning ordinance or general code.
So the idea here is that if it's a wall sign, it has to be made out of something. It can't just be painted on a building. We're kind of dancing around it, but we don't want to regulate art in the regulations for signs. So we're just trying to be careful about that. It would be great to have a mural or public arts ordinance. And maybe that's something that we can talk about sometime soon. But that
So
might
make-
be another conversation. for another
So
day.
make sure I'm clear on this.
All about art, yeah.
Painted wall signs are intended to be a painted sign on some other piece of something
Right.
that is then attached to a wall.
You know what? I thought we had a definition for it, and I don't see that. I don't see it, and I wonder if we had it before. Maybe it would be helpful if we have a definition for that.
I think it would be.
Painted wall sign.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's just the kind of sign that and basically, and maybe instead of saying painted wall sign, we just say wall signs that are painted onto a building. Wall signs that are painted onto a building might be more clear. And that could even be moved to the wall sign section.
Yeah, if we can make that clearer, then this being on a prohibited list.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yep. I think that's the only other. It looks like there's some like typo-y type stuff and updates,
Yeah,
and you're just gonna
we'll clean
clean it
that up.
up. So that's great. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Like the current mayor.
Other than that, it looks great. I
Okay.
like everything else that's in there
Yeah.
myself.
You were going to say something, Scott?
Or Bruce.
I've got
Bruce?
one more question. Oh, am I?
Yeah, we hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. With respect to the 10% window signage, I've had I just thought of this because I've had a business owner who's been talking to me about a violation that he was cited with for having his entire window blacked out, and he was cited as saying it had more than signage is only allowed for 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's probably a Scott question, but is just putting blackout on your window something that makes it opaque? Is that considered a sign?
Yeah, and I think in that particular individual's case, it was a requirement. Or maybe that one wasn't a special land use, but typically it's from a public safety standpoint that the police officers need to be able to see inside the establishment what's going on. More so on that one too, because then they couldn't live in there.
Yeah, I guess the question is do we need to make it more clear here in this ordinance that says, since we're saying 10% signage, do we need to say anything about that, or would that go somewhere else?
How did you quote that to me the other day, Jill? Because it's like window coverage, right?
Yeah, I think it's. I'm trying to look it up right now, but I think they're not sheets right now, or paper sheets can't be applied and used to obscure the window.
I don't think it's in the sign ordinance. I think it's in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, here's so I asked a kind of similar question to Jill yesterday afternoon, and
Let me just. Oh, you're going to tell them what kind of sign?
Yeah, they were those big, like perforated. Those kind of those. They cover the entire window. They're kind of perforated. They got little dots in them so that you can see the light.
Yeah,
and then
so
they've
they
got, the
obscure
sign
to a
copy.
varying degree.
Yeah.
And so I had asked Jill about it, and so in the zoning code 5226G window signs,
Sign code.
Sign code. Oh, that is the sign code, isn't it?
Yeah.
I cut off anyways. It says window signs shall be permitted for non-residential uses. Window signs on buildings shall not exceed 10% of the total glass area on that side of the building and on the floor where the sign will be located. Signs shall include permanent and temporary decals and static vinyl clings that are visible from the exterior. Such signs shall be calculated on the full extent of the graphic representation, regardless of its opacity. So, yeah, it really doesn't matter how, it's the 10%, right? It doesn't matter if it's clear on top, well, semi-clear on top or not. It's the whole.
Right. We have specific standards in the village center for transparency in the village center district. I'm just looking quickly. Because we've got that. And I don't remember, we don't have the same standard in the mixed use district, but we probably should have something similar.
So any other thoughts on signage? Doesn't look like we're gonna have too much time to cover the second item on the agenda here. So essentially at this point, Jill, you're going to be taking this information feedback and making adjustments to.
Right.
And then this will come back to us, or is it strictly going to?
I think it'll go to council after this. Scott, is that?
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the next step for it.
Yeah.
I'm good. I think this is great. We're moving in the right direction.
Good.
Okay. Well, we've got 10 minutes until the start time of the official meeting this evening. So do we want to go back and start talking about R1 amendment, parking as a special land use? Jill, I trust.
Again, I was waiting for the rest of you all to decide whether you needed a refreshment break.
Or if we, because we can start and then pause, and then we're all going to have to exit and then come back in under the new invite. So
I don't know that there's, I mean, in 5 minutes, you've seen this language before. And so we just brought it back. I haven't made any changes really. So we can talk about the reasons behind it and the standards that we have with it.
okay. So that I mean, I think that's helpful just on that front, that it's that it's just a kind of like bringing what we had last time back forward, and there haven't been any modifications at this point. So
right.
Okay. So that'll be there for our next discussion. So any planning commissioner comments?
None for me.
Any public comments? Do we have any public out there participating or listening in? I don't see any on our screens here, so if not, then I guess we'll move on. We'll just, I don't think we need to make a motion to adjourn, but just decide to adjourn the meeting, and we can all exit and then get back on the next Zoom session for our official Planning Commission meeting this evening.
Sounds good.
Sounds good?
See everybody in a
Okay.
minute.
Well, I'll speak to you in a few more minutes.